If you walked through the marketplace of Athens in the year 410 BC, you would have seen something strange. Amongst the beautiful statues, the wealthy politicians in their fine robes, and the obsessed young athletes, there was a man who looked like a monster. He had a flat, pug nose, bulging, frog-like eyes that stared a little too intensely, a large pot belly, and he wandered around barefoot, wearing the same dirty robe day after day, seemingly unemployed. This man was not a beggar, and he wasn't a madman. He was the most dangerous weapon in the ancient world. His name was Socrates. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are covering the man who, arguably, invented thinking. The man who split history in two. Before him, philosophy was about rocks and stars. After him, it was about us, about how to live. But here is the twist. The man who changed the world wrote 0 books. Nothing, not a single word. Everything we know about him comes from a game of telephone played by 3 people who knew him. And this leads us to the biggest headache in history, the Socratic problem. Imagine if you never wrote a biography, and the only things people knew about you came from 1. Your obsessive best friend who thinks you are a god, 2. Your boring military buddy who doesn't really get your jokes, and 3. A comedian who made fun of you on Saturday Night Live. That is exactly what we have with Socrates. We have Plato, his student, who painted him as the ultimate saint of wisdom. We have Xenophon, a soldier, who painted him as a practical, somewhat boring grandfather figure. And we have Aristophanes, the playwright. He wrote a hit comedy called The Clouds, portraying Socrates as a con artist and a clown who hung in a basket in the sky. So who was the real Socrates? He was born around 470 BC. His father was a stonemason, and his mother, Phenerete, was a midwife. That second part is crucial. Socrates later said that he was doing the same job as his mother. She delivered babies, he delivered ideas. He didn't create the idea himself, he was barren, but he helped you give birth to the truth. And he did this by being the most annoying person in Greece. Socrates would walk up to a general and ask, "What is courage?" The general would say, "Courage is standing your ground in battle." And Socrates would say, "But what if you retreat strategically to ambush the enemy? Is that not courage?" The general would get confused. "Well, yes." "So," Socrates would smile, "courage is not just standing your ground." He did this to everyone, judges, priests, politicians. He stripped away their confidence until they admitted they knew nothing. And that is how you make enemies. Why did he do it? Why annoy the most powerful people in the city? It wasn't just for fun. It was a mission from God. The story goes that Socrates' friend Chaerephon traveled to the Oracle of Delphi. This was the most sacred site in the ancient world. He asked the oracle a simple question: "Is there anyone wiser than Socrates?" The oracle replied, "No one." When Socrates heard this, he didn't celebrate, he panicked. He famously said, "I know that I know nothing, so how could he be the wisest?" He thought the oracle was broken. So he set out on a quest to disprove the god. He went to the politicians, the poets, and the craftsmen, people who claimed to be wise. He wanted to find someone, anyone, smarter than him, so he could go back to the oracle and say, "Look, you were wrong." But after interviewing everyone in Athens, he realized the oracle was right. The politician thought he was wise, but he wasn't. The poet wrote beautiful things but couldn't explain them. Socrates realized, "I am the wisest man alive, for I know one thing, and that is that I know nothing." He called himself a gadfly. A gadfly is a horsefly that bites a lazy horse to keep it moving. Athens, he said, was a lazy, fat horse, and he was the fly sent by the gods to sting it awake. But nobody likes being stung. To make matters worse, Socrates was often confused with the Sophists. The Sophists were the influencers of ancient Greece. They were paid teachers who traveled around teaching rich kids how to win arguments. They didn't care about the truth, they cared about winning. Socrates was the anti-sophist. He never took money, he walked around barefoot, and while the Sophists taught you how to speak, Socrates taught you how to listen. But to the average guy on the street, Socrates looked just like them. He was hanging out with young, rich aristocrats, tearing down traditional values. And this is where the trouble starts. Athens lost the Great War against Sparta. The city was crushed. A group called the 30 Tyrants took over, executing citizens and stealing property. And guess what? Some of those tyrants had been students of Socrates. Critias, the leader of the tyrants, Socratic student. Alcibiades, the traitor who switched sides, Socratic student. When democracy was finally restored, the people of Athens were angry. They needed a scapegoat. They looked around and they saw the old ugly man who had taught the men who destroyed their city. The year is 399 BC. Socrates is 70 years old. He is dragged before a jury of 500 Athenian citizens. The charges? 1. Impiety, failing to acknowledge the gods of the city. 2. Corrupting the youth. His accusers, Miletus, Anytus, and Lycon, wanted him silenced. They probably didn't even want to kill him. They just wanted him to leave town or shut up. But Socrates was Socrates. Most people in this situation would bring their crying wife and children to the court to beg for mercy. This was standard practice. Socrates refused. He said, "I will not play these games." Instead of apologizing, he gave a speech that we now call the apology. But apology in Greek doesn't mean "I'm sorry." It means defense. And what a defense it was. He didn't beg, he lectured them. He told the jury, "I am God's gift to you. You are lucky to have me." He basically said, if you kill me, you aren't hurting me, you are hurting yourselves. You are killing the only person honest enough to tell you the truth. The vote was cast, guilty, but it was close. 280 voted guilty, 220 voted innocent. A swing of just 30 votes would have saved him. Now came the sentencing phase. In Athenian trials, the accuser proposes a punishment, death, and the defendant proposes a counter-punishment. Usually, the defendant suggests a heavy fine or exile, and the jury accepts that. Socrates could have said, "I'll leave Athens and never come back." They would have accepted it. But Socrates stood up and said, "What do I deserve for spending my life helping you become better people? I think I deserve free meals for life in the Prytaneum, just like an Olympic champion." The jury was furious. This was pure arrogance. He was mocking the court. In the second vote, for the sentencing, more people voted to kill him than voted him guilty in the first place. They sentenced him to death by hemlock. He was sent to prison, but his friends weren't done. His wealthy friend Crito bribed the guards. The door was open. Crito went to Socrates and said, "We have a boat ready. We can go to Thessaly. You can live." Socrates said, "No." This is the moment that defines him. He argued that he had lived in Athens his whole life. He had accepted the benefits of the laws. Now that the laws had turned against him, he couldn't just break them, that would be hypocrisy. He said, "One must not return injustice for injustice." He chose to stay. He chose to die. It is one of the most famous scenes in literature, described in Plato's Phaedo. Socrates is surrounded by his weeping friends. He is the only one who is calm. He spends his final hours proving to them that the soul is immortal. He argues that a true philosopher spends his whole life practicing for death. To him, death isn't an end, it's a release from the distraction of the body. The jailer brings the cup of hemlock. Hemlock isn't a peaceful sleep, it's a neurotoxin. It paralyzes you from the feet up. Socrates takes the cup without a shaking hand. He prays to the gods, and he drinks it. He walks around the cell until his legs feel heavy, then he lies down. The numbness spreads, his feet, his legs, his waist. Before the poison reaches his heart, he uncovers his face and whispers his final words to Crito. "Crito, we owe a cock to Asclepius. Please do not forget to pay the debt." What did that mean? Asclepius was the god of healing. You sacrificed a rooster to him when you recovered from an illness. Socrates was saying that life, this confusing, physical, painful life, was the sickness, and death was the cure. Socrates died, but in doing so, he became immortal. By accepting death so calmly, he turned philosophy from a hobby into a heroism. His student Plato was so traumatized by the execution that he dedicated his life to writing down Socrates' dialogues, preserving his memory forever. Without Socrates, we don't get Plato. Without Plato, we don't get Aristotle. Without Aristotle, we don't get the scientific method, logic, and Western science as we know it. Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." He forced us to look in the mirror. He forced us to ask why. And even though he has been dead for 2,400 years, every time you question authority, every time you ask for evidence, and every time you admit, "I don't know," the gadfly is still stinging. Thanks for watching. If you want to examine your own life a bit more, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments, if you were on that jury, would you have voted guilty or innocent? I'll see you in the next one.